Mike Jones was down there.
Where were you when the world stopped turning on that September day? Out in the yard with your wife and children, or working on some stage in LA. And did you stand there in shock at the sight of that black smoke rising against that blue sky? Did you shout out in anger and fear for your neighbor? Or did you just sit down and cry? Did you weep for the children who lost their dear loved ones and pray for the ones who don't know? Did you rejoice for the people who walked from the rubble and sob for the ones left below? Burst out with pride for the red, white, and blue, and the heroes who died just doing what they do. You look up to heaven for some kind of answer. Look at yourself for what really matters. I'm just a singer of simple songs. I'm not a real political man. I watch CNN, but I'm not sure I could tell you the difference in Iraq and Iran. But I know Jesus and I talk to God, and I remember this from when I was young. Faith, hope, and love are some good things He gave us. The greatest is love. Where were you when the world stopped turning on that September day? Teaching a class full of innocent children, driving down some cold interstate. You feel guilty 'cause you're a survivor. In a crowded room, did you feel alone? Did you call up your mother and tell her you loved her? Did you dust off that Bible at home? I'm just a singer of simple songs. I'm not a real political man. I watch CNN, but I'm not sure I could tell you the difference in Iraq and Iran. But I know Jesus and I talk to God, and I remember this from when I was young. Faith, hope, and love are some good things He gave us. greatest is love. The greatest is love. The greatest is love. Where were you when the world stopped turning on that September day?
Ladies and gentlemen, Zach Seabaugh, Marietta's very own Zach Seabaugh. Zach is a 17-year-old country music recording artist and son of Kiwanis member Devin Seabaugh, and he's a season 9 contestant from The Voice. I also want to thank Tom Crawford, who is playing the bagpipes, also from Marietta this morning. A fantastic job. I'd like to extend a great good morning to all you ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, esteemed guests, and welcome to the Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park. My name is Rick Reitz. I'm the current president of the Screen Actors Guild American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, Atlanta, and a proud resident of Marietta, Cobb County, Georgia. It is my great, great pleasure to act as your host this morning. Now, out of respect, I'd like to ask everyone to take a moment to silence your phones if you have not done so already. It is always difficult to look back on September 11, 2001, and the events that have brought us here today. Events that not only shook America, but the world. Today marks their 15th anniversary, yet in many ways, it still feels like only yesterday. There can be no doubt that we are all filled with mixed emotions as we dwell on moments now frozen in time. Emotions that were first dominated by shock, then admiration for the heroism of first responders, followed by the outpouring of sympathy and support that always prove the heart and mettle of this great nation whenever it's confronted by a crisis. As we let our eyes gaze upon the majestic scene of this wonderful field of flags, one cannot help but feel the presence of those many souls lost. Let the spirits of those mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, spouses, partners, strangers, and friends join with you now, not just in solemn remembrance, but with the power of their legacies, which will never perish. This may resonate most when we interrupt our program to ring the bells at the exact times each of the commandeered planes attempted to rip at the fabric of our free and civilized society. Then take comfort that in the end, they failed. They will always fail. The bells will chime for American Airlines Flight 11, which crashed into the North Tower of the New York World Trade Center at 8:46:30 a.m. United Airlines Flight 175, which crashed into the South Tower of the New York World Trade Center at 9:02:59 a.m. American Airlines Flight 77, which crashed into the Pentagon at 9:37:46 a.m. And United Airlines Flight 93, which crashed into a Pennsylvania field at 10:03:11 a.m. The Kiwanis Club of Marietta organized the first Field of Flags Memorial on this site and on this date in 2002. Here to speak on behalf of the Kiwanis Club is its current president, Jerry Barr.
I am honored to be here today representing the Kiwanis Club of Marietta to thank all of you for joining us today to remember the almost 3,000 lives lost 15 years ago today on September 11th, 2001. Thank you for being here today, and for those of you who helped us post this Field of Flags yesterday. It was an honor participating in the procession of flags and watching the proud participants as they carried their own flag. many with tears streaming down their faces. It was most fitting that the processional was headed by Scott Davis with the Marietta Police Department, who was shot in the line of duty. Our Kiwanis Club is proud to be able to provide this opportunity to keep this memory alive so that we can never forget. For those of us over the age of 30, we have very vivid memories of the vision to the damage of the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and the downed plane in Pennsylvania. And we can relate where we were and what we were doing at that very moment. For those under 30, we have a responsibility to continue these demonstrations of patriotism and love of country so that they will never forget. Thanks to each of you for your participation in keeping this memory alive. We appreciate being able to provide this field of flags here on the grounds of the Kennesaw National Battlefield to honor the lives of those lost 15 years ago, as the battlefield celebrates 100 years of service to our community. This is a perfect example of the collaboration of civic, government, and community engagement, demonstrating our love for country and our patriotism. Thank you all for your part.
Thank you, Jerry. Now, we couldn't create an event like this without the great cooperation of the Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park. And here with an additional welcome is Nancy Walther, Superintendent of this great park.
Good morning. I want to thank you all for being here today to remember this solemn day in history. And a special thank you to the Kiwanis for planning and organizing this memorial event. It is their community support that brings the memory of 9/11 and our patriotism to the forefront. Looking out on the battlefield at the 2,977 flags brings a powerful emotional response. We stand here in quiet remembrance for the lives lost on September 11th, 2001, neighbor to neighbor, American to American. On this hallowed ground, 152 years ago, men fought for their beliefs and what they felt would make us a stronger nation. Thousands died at the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain, just like that day 15 years ago. What do these two events that resulted in great loss of life have in common? Courage. We are here to honor their memories and sacrifices while holding tight to our freedom and our civil rights as citizens of the United States. I can think of no better way to honor those that fell to this senseless act of violence than by flying an American flag to their memory and to freedom on this sacred, hallowed ground. We learn from our history, the good and the bad, to make ourselves stronger, to become a united States of America. Thank you.
Next, we'd like to take a few moments for an invocation. Joining us this morning is Rabbi Aaron Bakst from Temple Kol Emeth in Marietta.
Let us pray. Beloved God, we come together today not only to count our blessings, but also to remember those who gave their lives for the freedoms we sometimes take for granted. We thank all of our heroes, our servicemen and women, our police officers, our firefighters, and our EMTs, and everyone else who works in public service. Today, O God, we gather to thank and to remember. We must remain steadfast in our mindfulness and collective memory as we remember all of those who lost their lives on September 11th, 2001. We have learned a lot in our country since that devastating day. We have learned to come together as a community of all Americans, not only to remember, but also to continue to celebrate the freedoms we experience every day. In Cobb County, we come together every year at this holy site to remember and commemorate. We must not let their memories be forgotten. We must never allow ourselves to let their deaths be in vain. We live on today, every day, in their memories, in their honor. And we must let our lives serve as an example to our children of what we can accomplish when we come together. In truth, O God, we understand that at times there is a price to pay for bravery. But humanity is better because of men and women we remember today. They selflessly protect us, putting the needs of others first. So we join together in reverence and in humility, inspired by their courage, and we reaffirm our desire to help make this community stronger and safer. We recommit to extend our time, effort, and patience in stewardship to this community. Enable us to move forward today, listening to your holy words from the Psalms. May we enjoy, O Lord, your faithful care as we have put our hope in you. As we also learn in Psalms 46, verse 2, you are our refuge and stronghold, a helper very near to us. Amen.
This morning, we have many distinguished members of our panel here who have made time in their busy schedules to join us because they understand the importance of this day. First up, the Honorable Johnny Isakson, United States Senator, senior United States Senator from Georgia. He's been in office since 2005, previously represented Georgia's 6th Congressional District from 1999 to 2005. Please welcome the Honorable Johnny Isakson.
On a beautiful September 11th morning, 15 years ago today, a morning just like today, 19 radical Islamic terrorists hijacked 4 American domestic airliners and attacked New York City and Washington, D.C. In what I have called many times since in speeches that I have made, the first battle in the ultimate war between good and evil. And in the last 15 years, we've seen a lot more battles between good and evil. But the first American response was on Flight 93, which crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The Twin Towers had already been hit, the Pentagon had been hit, and that plane was headed either for the Capitol or for the White House. But Todd Beamer, an American citizen, and 61 of his fellow passengers, when realizing what was happening and realizing they were the 4th hijacked airplane, took on the terrorist, sacrificed their own lives, but killed the terrorist and crashed the plane in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. America always responds when it's challenged, and Todd Beamer was the first of many who responded to that terrible day. While we mourn the 2,977 lives that were lost on 9/11/2001, we must also honor the over 6,000 lives that have been sacrificed by our American men and women in our military, in Iraq and in Afghanistan, plus unknown places that terrorism has been attacked. We must continue as a nation to engage the ultimate battle between good and evil, and ultimately we must prevail, because there is no cowering to terrorism. There is no acceptance of terrorism. There is only one thing, and that's the defeat of terrorism. I had a pastor write me a letter not too many years ago on a very controversial issue before the United States Senate. And he started the letter by saying this, saying, "Senator, what we as adults will tolerate, our children will embrace." So true it is, because we found that there have already been young people in America who've gone to Syria to be radicalized. Terrorism tries to reach out to find us wherever it can, like Orlando, San Bernardino, or Fort Hood, or in Normandy, or in Brussels, or in Paris. We are in a full-scale war that we must win, and we must attack, and we will win. But it's going to take commitment, longevity of effort, and the blessings of the good Lord to see to it that we do so. But because organizations like the Kiwanis Club of Marietta have done what they're doing today and began 14 years ago, making sure we never, ever, ever forget, as Winston Churchill said, what happened to us on that terrible day, we will prevail and we will win. And as we celebrate this day, or memorialize this day, I think it's important, and it's a Sunday, I think it's important that we look also to the Bible for inspiration and support. There is a psalm, the 91st Psalm, which most every soldier in Afghanistan and Iraq carries in their breast pocket. It's a psalm that means a lot to them, and I think on this particular morning it'll mean a lot to you. It's one I hope you'll share as the day goes on. And it goes like this. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, or from the noise of the pestilence. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wing thou shalt trust. His truth shall shield thee from the buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid of the terror by night, nor the arrow that flies by day. It is our faith in the Lord that has blessed us as Americans, and it's our strength with that faith that will carry us on to other battles in the future when we win the ultimate battle between good and evil, and make sure that America remains what it has always been, the greatest nation on the face of this earth, blessed by God. May God richly bless the United States of America.
Thank you, Senator. Next, we have the Honorable Bob Barr. He is a former member of the U.S. House of Representatives. He has represented Georgia's 7th Congressional District with distinction from 1995 through 2003. He is also a former federal prosecutor. Please welcome the Honorable Bob Barr.
When President Jerry and Gail Downing, who also has done a great deal to put this program together, asked me a number of weeks ago to speak, I said, why me? And they said, well, we want you to speak about you. You do it all the time. And I said, but September 11th is not a day about me. It's about the victims, the heroes, our Lord and Savior, our country, and those who would take on the battle from that day forward. It's not about me. She said, look, everybody on that day, as Johnny just reminded us, and as Rick has reminded us, remembers exactly where they were, what they were doing, and what they then did as we watched in tremendous anguish as those planes hit the Twin Towers, hit the Pentagon, and as we learned shortly thereafter, so many Americans died, preventing that fourth plane from hitting either the U.S. Capitol, where I was working that day, or the White House. So to satisfy Jerry and put my human face on that day, let me recount for you very briefly what I was doing. I had literally just arrived in Washington, at Reagan National, that morning, about 8 o'clock. My chief of staff, who happened to be from New York, drove me from Reagan to the office. No sooner had we arrived at my office, I was preparing to chair a subcommittee meeting that day for the Judiciary Committee. Then he came rushing into the office and turned on the television and said, "Watch this," just as the footage was being shown of the first plane hitting the tower. My first reaction was, this must be an accident. Yet the day was clear, the towers were clearly visible, something was obviously wrong. But we prepared to go over to the office building where the hearing was being held that I was going to chair. No sooner had we gotten there than the other plane hit, and we obviously knew that something truly was terribly wrong. No sooner had I sat in my chair than the plane hit the Pentagon. And I immediately made the announcement that after a brief prayer, yes, we still can pray in the U.S. Capitol, no sooner did we say a prayer than I cut short the hearing, urged everybody to go home. Then I went back to the office. The building was virtually deserted by that time. All of the bigwigs had been taken off to safety. So, those of us who were just mere members of Congress just sort of wandered around. Well, we didn't really wander around. We stayed in our office with my chief of staff. We sent everybody else home. And we listened to the news. Of course, there was tremendous questions in people's minds back home here in Marietta, where my family was and the families of so many that day. And even though many of the phone lines were either out or overcapacitated, I actually have the original BlackBerry that I used that day. It's sort of a dinosaur BlackBerry, But it actually worked. And Jerry was able to get in touch with me, keep me better informed of what was going on, and allow us to make sure that we and our family, unlike those of so many other families, were doing okay. A little bit later that day, I went down to we have a little vending area in the House office building. Not nearly as fancy as they have over in the Senate, but we have one in the House. And I went down there to get a sandwich. And as I was down there, another member of the House was down there, a Democrat from Iowa. And we chatted a little bit, that what's going on? I mean, we had very, very little information. Later that day, we had a briefing, and as my chief of staff and I were walking back from the Capitol Police building where we had a briefing, all of the members of Congress that were still there that day gathered on the steps of the U.S. Capitol building, and we broke into a chorus of, as we did here this morning, God Bless America. Of course, on that day, I knew, as everybody here knows, that America was great. America would not only survive, but thrive. And as we stand here today, we know that's true. Despite what some say in the political arena, America is great. America has never stopped being great, and America never will stop being great because of what brings us here today. The spirit of America is alive. It was alive on September 11th of 2001. It will be alive on September 11th of every century going forward. And it is very humbling for me simply to stand here today at the invitation of the Marietta Kiwanis Club to thank you all, to thank the Kiwanis Club, to thank Kennesaw Mountain Battlefield Park in honoring the true heroes that day, and that is the men and women who selflessly gave their lives, put their lives in danger to save their fellow man, those victims who died that day simply because they were Americans that others in the world hate. And to stand here today in their shadow and say to them, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Next, we have the Honorable Roy Barnes, former Georgia governor. He was our 80th governor in Georgia from 1999 to 2003, member of the Georgia Senate from 1974 to 1990, in the Georgia House of Representatives from 1992 to 1998, Marietta's own Honorable Roy Barnes.
For that train to come at this exact moment. Certain dates stand out as beacons in every generation. For our father's generation, it was Pearl Harbor Day, December the 7th, 1941. For the next generation, it was the day President Kennedy was assassinated, November 22nd, 1963. But for the current generation, it was September the 11th, 2001, the day America lost her innocence. We all remember where we were, as Congressman Barr has talked just earlier, on September 11. We remember our shock that America could be attacked on our own shore. We remember our grief for those who died. We remember the sorrow that the capital of our nation was at risk. We remember the fear that it was just the beginning of our fears. Now, 15 years later, we gather to remember, but also to celebrate. To celebrate that America has been maintained, and that spirit that is so strong that has kept us for generation is strong. To celebrate that our nation has been stronger and is stronger than ever. To celebrate that we are more prepared for adversity because we endured adversity. We have learned in those 15 years that the American people are tough and determined, that we do not yield to cowards who seek to do us harm without notice or alarm, that we will, as President Kennedy said, pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, and oppose any foe in order to assure the survival and success of liberty. One of the things that's most telling to me is I remember back on September 11th is a poem that was written by a little 7th grader after September 11th. Her name is Hannah Short. And this is what she wrote. Those twin towers standing tall with pride fell with grieving hearts, stunned, America cried, but we're still standing. Bin Laden tried to crush our land, but we stood our ground with our flag in hand, and we're still standing. Red for valor and the blood that fell, white for purity, our heroes tell. Blue for the justice that will be done, proving once more these colors don't run, and we're still standing. This is the lesson of September 11th, that we will as Americans persevere until time is no more. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you, Roy. It's difficult for all of us who were not directly affected with the events of September 11th to know what it must have felt like when something hits home to someone from their home. Our next special reflection is from Marianne Burke. She is the sister of 9/11 victim Catherine McGarry Nowak. Please welcome Marianne.
Good morning. It's my honor to be here this morning, and I extend my deep gratitude to the Marietta Kiwanis Club for giving me this opportunity to share this reflection about my experience and my family's experience on 9/11/2001. My husband Joe and I have lived here in Marietta for over 25 years and raised our 3 children here. 15 years ago today, my day began just like every other day. I got up, got my kids ready for school, drove them over, came home and put on the news. Like many Americans that morning, I watched with horror the unfolding events that began with the first airplane crashing into the North Tower. As a native New Yorker, I feared that I would know someone or I would know some families affected by this horrible event. In fact, I knew that my new brother-in-law worked in one of the towers, but I wasn't really quite sure where. But little did I realize that later that morning, I received a call from my father. He informed me that my youngest sister, Katie, was attending a conference that day in the North Tower. As a matter of fact, she was at the top of the North Tower, windows on the world. This was unexpected news, as she did not work there and only found out the day before that she was to attend. When the first plane hit the towers, Katie was able to communicate with her husband Brad, who did work in the North Tower on the 35th floor. She mentioned to him the thick smoke and the fact that they were trapped, and she feared that they would not be able to escape. The second phone call she made gave her last words to her family when she asked Brad to tell us that she loved us. Brad did escape and was outside when the towers fell. Katie and Brad had been married in 2001, lived in Hoboken, New Jersey. She was 30 years old. Her remains were never recovered. As we commemorate the 15th anniversary of these tragic events, there are a few days since that I have not thought about Katie. Since her death, our family has celebrated weddings, newborn babies, graduations, all with the void of Katie not being there with us. Although it's been 15 years, sometimes it feels like yesterday. As I reflect on this day, the horror of that day is difficult to remember, but it also reminds me of the love and support that we have received from family, friends, and the Marietta community over the past 15 years. Looking out on this field of flags, I recall my drive to New York City the week after the attacks. I remember driving over the Verrazano Bridge and still viewing the smoldering remains of the towers. I also remember seeing American flags everywhere. There was such a sense of pride and unity in our country. This field of flags reminds me, and hopefully all of us, of the sense of patriotism that was during that time. And it is also a wonderful tribute to each and every victim that died that day, and also those that continue to defend this great nation and our freedom. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize our first responders, especially those that heroically sacrificed their own lives that day as they answered their call to duty. I would also be remiss if I did not remember those that have died since 9/11 as a result of their heroic efforts. They will never also be forgotten. I would also ask that we remember and thank all of the brave men and women of our armed forces who have fought and continue to fight for our country. In response to 9/11, many Americans answered the call to duty, including my own son, Kevin. He enlisted in the United States Army as an infantryman and was deployed for 3 combat tours, 1 in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan. He was awarded an Army Commendation Medal with Valor and a Purple Heart. I would like to thank the Marietta Kiwanis Club, Kennesaw Mountain Battlefield Park, and the many others who have made this incredible tribute possible. My family and I are blessed to live in this community and in this great nation. 9/11 will be a day I will never forget, and a day that has dramatically shaped the world we live in. In closing, I would like to share a quote in honor of my sister Katie, my cousin John Farrell, and the thousands of others who perished that day. This quote is on the wall of the 9/11 Museum of New York City, and it says, "No day shall erase you from the memory of time." Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne, for sharing that beautiful story, and know that you will always have our condolences from everybody here. The bell you just heard struck was for American Airlines Flight 11, which crashed into the North Tower of the New York World Trade Center at 8:46:30 a.m. Next on our program, we have the American's Creed, which will be delivered today by the Chapter Regent Anita Mashburn of the Daughters of the American Revolution, Fielding Lewis Chapter. Please join me in welcoming Anita.
Good morning, and greetings from the Fielding Lewis chapter of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution. Our country soon will be celebrating the 100th anniversary of the American's Creed, which appears on the back page of your program. The American's Creed was written in 1917 by William Tyler Page, the great-great-grandson of one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. William Tyler Page served our country as clerk of the United States House of Representatives. He also served as President General of the United States Flag Association. Just as our country was entering World War I, he wrote the American's Creed. The American's Creed proclaims in exactly 100 words the basic principles and goals by which our nation is governed. It has been accepted on behalf of the American people by an official resolution of the United States House of Representatives. This morning's service is a fitting time for us to proclaim the strong patriotic values contained in the American's Creed. These principles continue to guide us and bind us together as a country. Please join me now in saying the American's Creed. It is printed for you on the back of your program. I believe in the United States of America as a government of the people, by the people, for the people, whose just powers are derived from the consent of the governed, a democracy in a republic, a sovereign nation of many sovereign states, a perfect union, one and inseparable, established upon these principles of freedom, equality, justice, and humanity, for which American patriots sacrificed their lives and fortunes. I therefore believe it is my duty to my country to love it, to support its Constitution, to obey its laws, to respect its flag, and to defend it against all enemies.
Thank you, Anita. I'd like to bring back to the podium current president of the Kiwanis Club of Marietta, Jerry Barr.
If I could ask you all to turn around and look at that magnificent sight. For those of you that carried a flag yesterday, you carried a body, a life of someone that we lost. Thanks to all of you for being here. Thanks to our wonderful Kiwanis Club of Marietta. Thanks to our co-chairs who made this happen, Holly Comer-Tuckman, Jim Mallard, Glenn Graham, and Mike Hebden. Thanks to the whole committee and all of the folks that made this happen, from the fellow who helped you park your car to the person who set up this podium. You made this day important. And I want to thank the folks who thought of this idea 14 years ago, Devin Seabaugh and Glenn Graham. Thank you for having this audacious idea. Appreciate all of you spending your Sunday morning here with us to honor these folks. Thank you.
And now, with a rendition of Amazing Grace, we welcome back Tom Crawford of Marietta and his bagpipes.